It is the 18th of the 8th, 2025. That means only one thing, that there are, as always, a very many F1-centric thread at which we need to pull. We'll talk about Frederick Vasseur saying that we underestimated Project Hamilton. No kidding, Sherlock. Build yourself. No, fix your fudging car. Frederick Vasseur. We'll talk about Marco, who's talked about Kimi Antonelli. So too, we'll talk about Jonathan Wheatley, former sporting director of Oracle Red Bull Racing, or was it Christian Horner Racing? We'll get techier than techie things today, because it is, as always, the one that F's. In the first instance, let me direct your guys' attention to something. I can't believe that this people want to tell me stop talking about this, Cameron. This story is old, it's tired. Maximilian Verstappen's not going anywhere. Well, we talked about the photographs that were leaked earlier on last week. Now we get another angle. That, for the avoidance of doubt, is Toto, the boy who cried wolf, on the left. Maximilian Verstappen, second from the left. Susie Wolf, Toto's wife, second from the right. And of course, Kelly Piquet, Max Verstappen's missus, furthest on your right. This, ladies and gentlemen, is real. I don't want to hear anybody telling me about Max and Toto are friends, that they have a working relationship outside of Formula One. Behave your flipping self. That, ladies and gentlemen, is proof positive that 2027 Maximilian Verstappen to Mercedes is as real as it gets. I don't want to hear anybody argue anything to the contrary, not with a straight face. Tell me for real, why is Max on that yacht? Non-rhetorical question. I'll wait. Why is Maximilian Verstappen on that yacht, laughing and joking with Toto and Susie? I mean, you can't write it. Red Bull, your move. If you fail to build yourself a car sans understeer, sans aerodynamic efficiency, that lacks the capability of winning races and therefore championships, you bet your bottom dollar that Maximilian Verstappen will be seen on Toto's yacht yet again, having conversations. Chat, this is a very real thing. You get the second angle. And remember, in the first instance, we thought that it might be Photoshop, that it might be AI generated pictures putting Toto and Maximilian Verstappen in the same location. Not anymore, chat. That's conclusive for me. I mean, come on. Like, laughing and joking. Lest we forget as well, the broader context is this. Netflix's Drive to Survive. You remember Toto was having a conversation with Susie on their balcony in Monaco. Well, who do I go for now that Lewis has surprised me, shocked me with this thing that he's going to Ferrari? Frederick Vasseur don't even pick up his phone. That's how I knew that Lewis going to Ferrari was a real thing for which I needed to contend. Well, Carlos Sainz probably isn't the guy. Would you do Alonso? Nah. Well, I promised Lewis that I would never speak to Max whilst Lewis were here. Toto will be keen to amend for the ills of 2015 when he had himself the opportunity to seize victory from the jaws, no mores of defeat, and sign the next generational one in Maximilian Verstappen. Don't think for a second that he won't be looking to cure, solve, amend for those mistakes. Ola Kalunius too has rubber stamped it as far as the 100 million remuneration package that they will need to pay to seal the Maximilian Verstappen deal. This is chaos. Oh, and by the way, I've got to talk about some Frederick Vasseur, because he's come out and he said a couple of things. Here's what he said. He said, Lewis and I, we collectively probably underestimated change of environment and its impact. The fact that he spent so much time, 20 years at the same team, explained Vasseur. He's not like Carlos Sainz. He's not been a club hopper. Adaptability cannot be Sir Lewis's forte, by dint of the fact that he spent so long within the Mercedes family. Lest we forget 2000, 2007, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. They were all at McLaren. They were a Mercedes team. So all of the acclimatization and adapting process will be by dint of that. No, a function of that. The engine of Ferrari is very different as far as its characterization. Torquey, the braking, very different, less progressive, says Sir Lewis, as versus carbon industry that he's so accustomed to. Now with Brembo, he's been experimenting with the disc and the pads. He can't run the car as low as he wants to get the confidence through the high to medium speed twisties. But I don't know what you're shocked about, Frederick Vasseur. You had all these facts at hand pre the 2025 season, you know that Sir Lewis was going to struggle with the culture, with the language, that it was going to be distance. It was going to always be techier than techie things. So what are we talking about now? Frederick Vasseur was meant to be the guy, but apparently he can't plan for even the short term, let alone the medium to long term. We know that they've sorted out 99% of the car at the altar of changing the suspension at the front. Why would you do that in the final year of a rule and reg spec? This makes no sense. Frederick Vasseur continues. McLaren was Mercedes, and then he moved to Mercedes, an English team based in Brackley, the same engine guys, the same culture, and so on and so forth. So he spent 2006 to 2024, 18 years in this environment, and then he arrived at Scuderia Ferrari, and we were stupidly expecting that he will have everything under control. Oh, the humanity. It's got to be. Something's lost in translation here. That Lewis Hamilton would have everything under control. No, he knows what good looks like. He knows what a world championship winning operation looks like. But to have everything under control, surely Frederick Vasseur, Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with a yellow badge and a black prancing horse on top, that's your remit, surely. Oh, and by the way, Helmut Marko's chimed in on Kimi Antonelli's foibles, lest we forget he was spotted crying rookie settings, super quick, but again, mental fortitude, right? Well, mental fortitude might be a bit harsh from me. Maybe this is just rookie settings, what you'd expect from a rookie with lots of Mercedes-based pressure on him. We saw him shedding tears at the post-race scrum. Again, yet another disappointing performance. Here's what's important though. As far as Kimi Antonelli is concerned, Helmut Marko says he's got a lot of pressure. He says the difference between Kimi Antonelli and the Red Bull Racing juniors is this. Helmut Marko says, quote, our juniors first drive for Racing Bulls and aren't immediately exposed to the pressure of F1. We also don't create hype around young drivers before they're in an F1 car. Well, to your first stanza, Helmut Marko, the one that they call Liam Lawson, disagrees orthogonally. What are you talking about, Helmut Marko? This is incorrect, sir. Liam Lawson, when he was in a Red Bull racing car, the Oracle Red Bull racing car, said that there was one thing that I needed. It was time. I didn't get it. They were experimenting. And again, I was happy to do that, but I didn't realise that was eating into my own preparation time. So what are you talking about, Dr. Helmut Marko? He continues, I mean, Mercedes don't have a junior team. Sure, I don't want to comment on how other teams how things work with it. Hang on. You don't want to comment on it, Dr. Helmut, but you've just been commenting on it. He continues about Antonelli and his not insubstantial potential as an F1 peddler. Now, Antonelli is certainly a very fast driver, but also very young. And strangely enough, we spoke briefly at the hotel in Spa, and he said then that he doesn't have the confidence in the Mercedes W16. As soon as he pushes, he loses control. Oh, the humanity. Way to call out Antonelli as a Mercedes snitch there for Dr. Helmut Marko. He continues, quote, so it's more a mental thing for Antonelli, and apparently the car is also very critical in the working window, similar to ours, and when it works, then it's much more toxic. Oh, the humanity, Dr. Helmut Marko. Do you know what I mean? Spare me some grace. Extend Kimi Antonelli some grace in a way that you didn't manage to do with Liam Lawson. Oh, and by the way, the race have penned an article, and I think this is quite important. If we're talking about the Lewis Hamilton circumstance, much has been said about his trajectory. Lewis Hamilton always takes a while to bed himself in to the circumstance, right, to the season. Even early on, the first 3 or 4 races, you're never going to get like proper Lewis Hamilton, fire breathing dragon Lewis Hamilton. Although this year, per this graphic from the race, you can see in China he was god tier, but that was at the altar of excessive plank wear, was it not, during the sprint race? What this graphic shows you is the number of times and the extent to which Charles Leclerc has outqualified Sir Lewis Hamilton over the course of the 14 rounds season to date. You can see in China anomalous circumstances, so too at Barcelona and Canada, where Sir Lewis Hamilton historically goes well, manages to outperform Charles Leclerc then, and so too at Silverstone. But these are Lewis Hamilton tracks. Give me the average. I'd be keen to see the average of the outperformance Charles Leclerc has versus Sir Lewis Hamilton, because on average, look at those gaps, 0.6 of a percent in super times terms. That's chaos. Now, of course, the Sir Lewis Hamilton fans, stands, fundamentalists and extremists alike will say he's travelling in the right direction, or he was at least until the past couple of races, failing to get out of Q1, etc, etc. However, I am still concerned, because what that graph looks like to me is a 40-year-old driver, notwithstanding him being Mount Rushmore of Formula 1, first round Hall of Fame, 7-time champion, GOAT settings, it still just looks like a 40-year-old driver to me, if I'm analysing and surmising even. He's just lost himself a bit of pace. Let's talk about Christian Horner. Yesterday we talked about this. Christian Horner, you'll remember, in his leaving speech said, I'm no longer doing my operational duties for Oracle Red Bull Racing. Very specific commentary from the one they call Christian Horner, as if he were going to continue as a Red Bull Racing employee. But we all know that speak for I've been sacked pending gardening leave. Now, per the document on the right, we went through it yesterday, he's been relieved of his duties proper. No longer is he a director. We know this because you got to submit the claim if you're going to amend your directorship as far as your organisational structure to Companies House if you are based out of the UK. However, Jonathan Wheatley, he was the one that knocks right. He was the legendary sporting director. He was team principal elect when Christian Horner was going to step away in the midst of all of the allegation gate, coercive behaviour, misconduct settings 2024, PA shared between Adrian Newey and Christian Horner. In and amongst all that furore, Jonathan Wheatley would have been looking at Christian Horner like, mate, I've got next. I'm meant to be team principal of Oracle Red Bull Racing. So are you not going to step down, sir? Lest we forget, Jonathan Wheatley was instrumental in deciding which way the 2021 Drivers' Championship went. Did one of these, turned around his cap and got in the face of Michael Massey with a view to influence, effect for change. And again, you can talk all you want to about motorsport, and we went motor racing and the polemic circumstance that was 2021. But yet and still, isn't that what you're supposed to do if you're the sporting director? Get in the face of the umpire and leverage some influence? I think so. Don't hate the player. Mention no names. Jonathan Wheatley. Hate the game. And Jonathan Wheatley was able to make sure that Christian Horner continued as team principal. For if Max Verstappen had not been able to get himself some silverware in 2021, Horner would have been sacked then on the spot, because Helmut Marko and the Austrians, Dietrich Mateschitz, had been running out of patience with the fella then. However, Christian Horner's not there anymore, and it feels like a change, a paradigm shift as far as the direction of Oracle Red Bull Racing. Jonathan Wheatley, though, put out this. He's said a couple of different things by the courtesy of Autosport, and I think this is important. I always thought that Jonathan Wheatley and Christian Horner were like this, that they operated as one, that Christian Horner was the face of Oracle Red Bull Racing, and Jonathan Wheatley was its mind, its race IQ. He was the guy that in 2022 went through the rules and regs and advised the FIA that they could award Maximilian Verstappen the championship and so 25 points for a curtailed Suzuka Grand Prix. He was the dude. Jonathan Wheatley was the brains. He was the operational infrastructure par excellence. The reason why the pit crew barely made a mistake, if ever, hardly ever. Jonathan Wheatley was it. And he was next up, wasn't he? But this was Christian Horner Racing, not Oracle Red Bull Racing, and therein lies the problem. On learning of Christian Horner's dismissal, Jonathan Wheatley was towing the party line, PR perfect. So listen, you've only got to look at Christian Horner's accolades to understand what he means for Oracle Red Bull Racing. Since 2005, they've only had one team principal, and he had a name. His name was Christian Horner. So put some respect on it. Wheatley's words then. However, something's been happening in the background. There's been a change, a paradigm shift as far as the direction of team principals. Lest we forget, Jonathan Wheatley, former sporting director of Oracle Red Bull Racing, now Sauber team principal. He always harboured aspirations of becoming a TP. Some would say that he should have been Oracle Red Bull Racing's TP, but for 12 months worth of adverse timing. So too, you want to talk about Permane and Steve Nielsen. Steve Nielsen is to become Alpine team principal as at might even be already. I was going to say next year now, but 2025. And then Permane too, also now a bloody team principal. Permane, Nielsen, and now Jonathan Wheatley, team principal of Alpine, Racing Bulls, and Sauber, soon to become Audi. These bods work together at Benetton. They're mates. And now Jonathan Wheatley's spoken about it. And I want to read the comments out to you. Jonathan Wheatley put this up on the right side. Him and, I want to say it's Nielsen, isn't it? I always forget Nielsen and Permane and mix the two of them. But that's his mate from Benetton. Now they're bloody team principals. Here's what you need to know about this, because it's techie than techie things. Jonathan Wheatley said this to Autosport. And I want to say it's not explicitly what he said, but what he's not said. I feel like he's throwing barbs at his old mate. Not so friendly now, the one that they call Christian Horner. Here's what Wheatley said, and I quote, "I think we have done enough of Formula One commissions together to be conscious that we want to be truly contributing to the sport as team principals." The old Benetton bods, he's talking about himself, Nielsen and Permane, now team principals, that they have a duty to the sport, not just to their individual teams over whom they are purveying the circums. That is techie, this. I'm lost for words because this is juicy. Wheatley continues, "The sport is at a high level right now where it deserves that a group tries to tune down their short-term and mid-term interests to discuss with the FIA and with F1 on how to drive it forward. That's the way we try to do it. We don't hide our bias, but we try to be constructive about how we go about it." He's seen his role as a team principal, as an ambassador for Formula One. Now, chaos. He continues, quote, "We know how to separate." Oh my goodness. Chat, buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Jonathan Wheatley says, quote, "We know how to separate our personal relationships from our professional relationships, mate." You're not talking about Permane and Nielsen there. You cannot be. It's more overarching. Of course, you're talking about Christian Horner, who sadly allowed his personal relationships to overtype, to drip feed and permeate into his professional ones. He failed to delineate the two, and that's ultimately why he got dismissed. Wheatley continues, "We all work together on achieving a common goal. In fact, I would say 99% in the best interest of the sport, in the sporting group. And I'm absolutely certain that at team principal level, we will have the same philosophies, which is overarchingly to do the best thing for Formula One." Can you imagine Christian Horner reading this? He'd be like, "How very dare you, Jonathan Wheatley. The second that they take me off company's house as a director, this is how you talk about me." Bloody Nora and Jonathan Wheatley. It's chaos. He continues, "We've been together at all the FIA groups and FOTA even back in the day, so we understand what's needed. We represent our teams in the best possible way." Oh, the humanity, Jonathan Wheatley. Save me. But if a decision is for the best interest in the sport, generally we come around to that, and I'm looking forward to those discussions. Oh, the humanity. He goes on and he talks about the relationships, the toxic relationships between team principals, erstwhile, mentioned none of names, Andrea Stella, Zach Brown, Christian Horner. Says that he doesn't want that anymore, that this is a new day for Formula One. And these guys need to be better behaved if they're acting in the best interest of the sport. I think that's chaos, chat. I'll be honest with you. I think he's just a thinking shooter in Jonathan Wheatley, a god tier mind, photographic memory, etc. I mean, for him to be saying those things, timing is critical here. It's techier than techie things. All team principals are not horned out. 100%, Stephen. But go on, let me push forth this. If I argue devil's advocate and get ever so slightly contrarian for a second, one of the travails of this, one of the failings of this season, is that it feels all a bit nicey. Now, over the remaining 10 races, will it get techier than techie things between Oscar and Lando? Probably. But as far as the team principals, imagine Drive to Survive, Sons, Christian Horner and Zach Brown beef. Where's your footage going to come from? Where's your why to watch a Drive to Survive? In not having Christian Horner there, it's all a bit nice and a bit altruistic and a bit UNICEF. And I'm not sure that I'm down for that. Jonathan is going to cook next season, says Safak. Audi will bring a decent engine and Jonathan to finish it. I don't know about next year. I think next year might be a bit. Is that Permane? There you go, Max. You're a legend. I'm not sure whether Audi will I don't know whether Audi will cook next year. It's tough in the weird and wacky world that is F1. It is tough. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they do end up cooking. I'm not sure. I just think it would be more difficult. Now, has Jonathan Wheatley done a good job season to date? You bet your bottom dollar he has. Low hanging fruit. Pit stops have gone up. Operational infrastructure, sporting endeavour, part excellence. You bet your bottom dollar he has. But bloody Nora, I don't know. To start winning and podiuming regularly, I think it's a big ask. Safak, you're an absolute legend and far too generous as always. Nick says, so I have a question. If 7-time world champion Hamilton leaves Mercedes, why would Max want to go there? Well, Nick, to be honest with you, F1 excellence and the ability to win races and championships is an Overton window, right? It changes. Nothing's ever stasis. It's a fluid. Being competitive and having durable competitive advantage is a fluid equation. It never stays still for too long, right? I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago, it feels, that McLaren were last 12th, like 10th of 10, like, and all of a sudden they've got aerodynamic efficiency, the double brake, that flexi wing at the front. All of a sudden, nobody can get close to them. So, do you know what I mean? It's like saying, Nick, well, why would Carlos Sainz left McLaren? So did Alonso. Why would Max Verstappen want to go there? Well, only because they're the best. They're heading in the right direction. Their line of travel, and they're the best car on the grid. Who's to say that Mercedes won't be the best car on the grid this time next year? It's going to get techier than techie things. Oh, and by the way, as we round third base, Andrea Stella's spoken to this, and this is concerning for F1 fans who are invested in a levelling of the competitive landscape. Here's what Andrea Stella said. He said, you know what, next year, I know it's a brand new rule and reg set, the first time that F1 is changing both the aerodynamic and engine power unit regs at the same time. However, that doesn't mean necessarily that we're going to drop from first to last, that there are lessons that we can roll forward from 2025 from the ground effects rule and reg spec into 2026, an adjustable aero. A couple of things. The lessons learned, how to fix for a car in the first instance. Aerodynamic efficiency. Ground effect won't be as overweight as far as the rules and regs in 2026, but they'll still be a thing. How to manage the dynamic between the car and the tyres, because we understand that that's where the durable competitive advantage of the MCL 3.9 comes from. Andrea Stella says, don't bank on us to just sink like a stone. We'll be right there next year. That some of the advantage, some of it at the very least, will be expected to roll forward into 2026. Oh, the humanity, chat. Please say it's not so. McLaren set to dominate in 2026 as well. Please, no. Toto's told us already, hasn't he? He said it's probably his worst mistake that he's ever made, agreeing to supply McLaren with engines, Mercedes engines, for the foreseeable future. Because again, that could put paid to all of his efforts to get himself Maximilian Verstappen. Can you imagine Max in a McLaren? Don't think for a second. Look, here's the truth. You heard James Allen talking about the relationship between Oscar and Lando on his podcast most recently. And here's why it's interesting. Here's why there's such an emphasis on the papaya rules. Basically, don't crash into each other. Oscar, are you okay with us celebrating Lando if he wins, and vice versa? Lando, are you okay with us celebrating if Oscar wins? The reason why there's so much emphasis on the united colours of Benetton and team ethos and culture is because if they cheese off one of those drivers, don't think for a second that they won't leave. Lando Norris 1.0. He will leave that team instantly if he sees, like Carlos Sainz did in 2015, that he has no chance of beating Oscar Piastri in the same car. And that might be the eventuality as it transpires in 2025. It might well be. That's why Zach Brown and Andrea Stella have to so acutely and have to be so fastidious about the way in which they manage for Lando Norris' stakeholder, because he will leave. And what happens then? Lando leaves McLaren. Do you not think that Maximilian Verstappen would jump in that car in an instant? Again, it sounds like I'm hypothesizing. Maybe Cameron's lost his mind and he's just reaching. But Murray Wilcox has told you that anything can happen in Formula One, and usually does. I didn't think for a second, if past his prologue, that Lewis Hamilton was going to leave McLaren ever. And definitely not for Mercedes. We all thought that he'd lost his cotton picking mic. Absolutely not. No chance. And then it transpires and it looks like it was the move. Maybe that's what's going to happen for Ferrari in the not too distant future. Of course, Stella wants to believe that they're going to hit the ground running next year, says that. I know, but he makes a sound point. We'll go through it a bit later on in detail, Stephen, because he makes some very sound points. And notwithstanding your boy trying to be contrarian, I could not pick at them. They're a low-hanging fruit. There will be a roll forward. I think it's just the extent and not the kind, right? I think there will be an advantage that McLaren can take forward, but how much of that advantage is the question? You guys have been legends as always. I will catch you a bit later on. Have a fantastic Monday. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.